Are you perplexed about whether to buy a home or not, given the pressure on the housing market in recent months? Well, you are not alone in facing this dilemma. The current market trends have forced people to reconsider their decisions of making real estate purchases. There has recently been observed the worst housing decline on record, coming in at a whopping 35% drop. For the fourth straight month now, home prices are dropping, especially with what is so-called the real estate reckoning around the corner. That is why it is crucial that you know the latest numbers, go through recent 2023 forecasts for where housing prices could decline the most, and discuss the best ways you could take advantage of a housing market downturn. Whether you are buying a home or thinking to buy one, it is important that you know the game well to make a smart choice. So if you ask me, when it comes to housing prices, 2023 is likely to be a challenging year for different reasons. So here are 4 challenges in the housing market for the year 2023. 1. Interest rates. As you might already know, interest rates have risen at the highest pace in history. We are currently hovering over the same numbers that we saw back in the early to mid-2000s. Except, unlike 20 years ago, median home prices are no longer $187,000. Instead, they are around $454,000. And you bet that median incomes have not gone up enough to keep up. 2. Consumer spending. Let me put it simply for you. People do not have as much money. Wall Street Journal recently reported that shoppers have pulled back sharply on holiday-related purchases, home projects, and cars as demand for goods decreased and factories cut production. Think it this way. If you normally have $2,000 left in the bank account after expenses every single month, higher prices might mean that you have only $15,000 left. That means there is less disposable income and less money that can be spent on housing. 3. Rising layoffs. The fact is that unemployment is basically a lagging indicator that occurs at the end of a recession. After all, when inflation increases, people have less disposable income, companies have weaker earnings, and as a result, they begin to scale back, usually with employees. You would have heard that various tech companies are reducing their workforce, so more job cuts coming means less upward pressure on housing. 4. More inventory. The number of homes for sale has increased by 15% year-on-year, which is the largest increase on record. Not to mention the median sale prices that have only gone up 1.5% to a year ago. All of that combined is likely to fall over the next year. Recent 2023 forecasts on real estate. Take a look at the recent forecasts to understand the situation better. Let's start with the National Association of Realtors outlook for 2023, which admittedly is one of the worst on the list. In terms of the overall prices, they believe that home prices are likely to remain unchanged from where they are today. That means half the country could experience small price gains, while the other half could see some decline. They also believe the mortgage rates will begin to fall and likely settle around 5.7% by the end of the year, leading, of course, to a more normal housing market. Now, Realtor.com, however, takes that to an extreme, believing that home prices will actually increase by 5.4% during the next 12 months, driven by low inventory, although they have not always been the most accurate, with last year's forecast being off by more than 7%. Zillow takes a slightly different approach. By aggregating their own numbers and gathering data, they are able to general consensus on the latest market conditions. For 2023, they believe that price decline will be moderate across the country, and vacation destinations will likely take the biggest hit. So, those experts believe that 2023 will be the year to favor the buyer. This does not mean that all areas are going down. As their chart explains, some of the country might continue to get more expensive. In terms of the final consensus, the analytics company CoreLogic forecasts that housing prices will continue to rise by another 4.1% through October 2023. Although, in fairness, they often adjust and correct their numbers on monthly basis, so I would not recommend you take that very seriously. In terms of the overall housing values, the general consensus seems to be that the appreciation is local, and even though coastal markets are likely to see a 5 to 15% drop, other parts of the country could stay the same or even get more expensive. Market trends in rental prices. There is another aspect of housing that I honestly feel is very interesting. That is rent. You see, rental prices are generally very stable, and they tend to be a lagging indicator when times are bad. For example, rents actually increased throughout the 2008 financial crisis and did not actually begin to drop until a year later after the recession ended in 2010. You might be wondering, why is that so? Well, when prices begin to fall and people are losing their homes, a lot of them choose to rent, which leads to an increase in rental prices. From that point on, prices only started to fall once tenants started buying their own properties because the amount of owning was cheaper than that of renting. So all of a sudden, the rental prices began to drop. Today, something different is happening. RealPage found that the national asking rents dropped by 0.59% in last November. The primary reason for this drop is not that those renters are turning into buyers, but it is a lack of new household formation, which basically means that people are either moving back with their parents or living with roommates instead of striking it out on their own. Markets like Phoenix and Las Vegas are also the first to see a year-over-year decline in rents, with the rest of the country beginning to follow. This is also a trend that does look like it is going to stop anytime soon. As RealPage points out, apartment construction has reached a 40-year high, with more than 917,000 units underway, estimated to be completed in the second half of 2023. That means there is a lot more inventory about to come to the market, and not enough demand to rent it all. Though the data suggests that rents are falling, not all locations are equal. But on top of that, it was found that renting is still cheaper than buying throughout most of the states. You should know that all over the United States, less than 50% of landlords raised rents by 3%, with the other 50% raising less or even nothing, with the economy getting slower and slower. In fact, when you dive into the data, one analysis explains that most of the headline rent increases are reported from tenant turnover and not increases from existing tenants. Most of the increases in rent are simply from landlords who want to bring their rent back up to the current market value. But that does not mean that you should not expect an increase in rent at all, because according to a study, almost 75% of landlords intend to raise at least something. But this study also pointed out that smaller landlords are less likely to raise rents during the renewal period, since a vacancy would have a larger financial impact than an institution where rent is spread throughout hundreds or thousands of units. So the good news is that although 2023 could be more challenging if you are currently paying under market value, if you are planning to rent a new place, it is probably going to be a lot cheaper than it was a year ago, with prices continuing to fall. Trends in home prices. So let's now address the title of the video. Home sales have slumped by 35%, which is the biggest decline on record. But it is important to understand that home sales do not necessarily correlate with lower prices. It is because home sales are just the number of homes sold in a given period. Throughout COVID, home sales were abnormally low, only because few people were selling. This time, home sales are low because people are not buying. Today, not only are there 18% more homes on the market than a year ago, but these homes are lingering on the market for longer as buyers take their time. Buyers are simply waiting to get conditions to improve in the next 12 to 18 months. So if you ask me, I would advise you to purchase what you can really afford at a fixed mortgage rate that you intend on keeping for at least 7 to 10 years. All other guesses are more like shots in the dark. So that was all from today's video. Thank you for watching.